everybody, it's Lavender Town, and today I'm going to do a Do This Not That video about shading, light, and highlights. And as I always like to say in these Do This Not That's, I am not trying to criticize how anybody else does their shading. I'm just trying to share some tips and tricks and to show you how I sort of developed in this particular area as I continue to learn how to draw. And right before I get started on that, I just want to say this video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community where anybody can take a class or even teach a class. Membership is as low as $10 a month, and I can actually get you guys a free trial with my code down below in the description. So if you're interested in that, please check it out. I highly recommend all the webcomic related ones, but especially Sarah Anderson's webcomic series. It's really great, and who better to learn about webcomics from other than a professional webcomic artist. Skillshare also offers an app for Android and OS devices, so you can watch videos on the go. Thank you for the continued support, Skillshare. Okay, so for this shading video, I'm going to start with the things that I used to do that I don't think are quite as effective as some other shading techniques. So on this one, I'm just shading using the burn tool, and I'm going to highlight using the dodge tool. And those are photo manipulation tools that are in Photoshop that a lot of beginners tend to use for shading. It seems like kind of a good tool at first because darkens things with the exact color that's underneath it, so it seems like a really easy way to do good shading. The problem with the burn tool is that it really is meant more for photography, and the way that it shades is really strange and it ups the saturation in a weird way. A lot of people, when they see shading with the burn tool, will automatically assume you're a newbie, so it's kind of a good thing to stay away from. What I'm doing now is another thing I used to do a lot of, where I just take a gray color basically, put a multiply layer above my work, and then just sort of put it all over the place without any real thought about where the light was coming from. I just sort of shade randomly with a soft brush and a gray. So there's a couple problems with doing it this way. The number one problem is you're not really seeing any interesting form information. You're just seeing a lot of gray stripes basically. The other problem being that gray tends to suck the life out of things. Also, I used to highlight like this, where I would just have a fuzzy white, and I'd basically just put it everywhere, every single place I could think to put it. And the main problem with that is that not only is it not very true to life, but it makes your character look sort of like slimy and just too reflective. The other way that I used to shade that was not so good, and this is much subtler, it's not like it's egregiously bad or anything, it's not like it looks hideous, but it's very slow. So what I used to do is I would take every single color that I was using in my picture, and then I would eyedropper tool select it so that I would have exactly that color, and then I just made it darker by like 20%. And I would do that for every part of the drawing, so you can see that I'm having to select new colors for every different shaded part. And like I said, it doesn't look that bad, it's just very, very slow and finicky. Because you're constantly having to select new colors and you're having to keep track of a bunch of different colors of shading. It's also not particularly dynamic, especially considering how much work you're putting in. And I know a lot of people still work this way. I also used to highlight the same way, where I'd select the color again and just lighten it by like 20%. And again, it's not that it looks super bad, it just takes about twice as long as some other shading techniques that look just as good. Okay, so now before I get into the techniques that I actually use, I'm going to talk a little bit about how light works. So that little awkward looking sun that I put up there is just to show you where the light is coming from. This is one of the most common places light comes from, so especially when you're outside, it's usually from a little bit above you and from a bit of an angle, unless you're straight up at high noon. So this is an angle that I usually pick for my characters when the light isn't super important. So basically I'm just showing you how the shades fall when the light is up there. Basically you just want to think about the light, how it's shining, and anywhere where part of her body or part of her clothes are covering or blocking those arrows, that is where you want to shade. So obviously the underside of her hat is not getting any sun, and then the other side of her body, because of the angle of the sun, is not getting any light either. So you want to focus the shades on those areas of your character. There are more complicated things like reflecting light, the way that light bounces off of the ground and stuff, but I'm just going to focus pretty basically on how this works, just in case you guys are total beginners. So as you can see, I'm just shading with a basic gray, and I don't have any colors on underneath her because I really want to focus just on where that light is going. I don't want to be distracted by any value changes that happen because of lighter or darker colors. And I do recommend doing this as an experiment with your own art if you can. It's a good way to remind yourself how light is supposed to work. So now I'm just going to move that little light source to underneath her from the opposite angle, and we'll see basically how the shading moves based on that. This is a much less common angle because usually light's not shooting up at you from the ground, but it's good to be able to do shading and light from any angle just in case you need it. So the first way that I'm trying this out is I'm trying to do it the same way that I did the shading from before, but then I'm going to show you another technique you can do when there's a lot of shading like there will be in this picture. So you can see I'm basically just trying to feel out wherever there would be where that light would be blocked. So it's kind of like the opposite of what we did before. The underside of her hat is getting a lot of light. And we're keeping most of the shading on the left side of her body because obviously that light is so strong right from her right side of her body. Her skirt is a special challenge because it does balloon out somewhat, but it looks a little strange for it to have no light whatsoever, so I'm going to chip into that a little bit. And it's always good to just sort of block in a general idea of where all these shades are going to land, and then you can refine it more and more once you have a sort of rough idea of how you want it to look. And as you can see, light shining from below has a much different emotional sort of feeling than light shining from above. A lot of the times people use it in sort of alien or scary situations in comics and movies and stuff because it's kind of like when you shine a light under your face when you're telling a scary story. There's something a little unsettling about it because it's so different than the natural light that we are generally accustomed to. So the other way that I can do this is basically I can fill in her whole body with shading, and then I'm doing basically a focus on where the light is landing rather than where the light is being blocked. This can also be easier, so if you're having trouble with shading in the first method, you should try this out. Maybe you'll find it more easy. How easy or difficult this method is also depends, of course, on how dark the scene is. When the scene is really, really dark, it's better to put all the darks in first and then take away the light, and when the scene is really, really light, then you just put the shades in and leave most of it light, because obviously you want to be as efficient as possible, especially if you're interested in comics or animation, because speed really is key in a lot of those industries. So yeah, as you can see, I'm just sort of slowly finding all the places where the light is touching. And on a human face, usually it's going to, when the light is shining straight up, it's going to show the plane underneath the nose, it's going to show the top lip, it'll show bangs in the bottom of some hair, and right underneath that chin area. And of course, I'm working with a very cartoony character, so some of those planes aren't as defined as they would be in a more realistic picture. But if you're going for pure realism, it's always best to have a reference. And you can just get a little flashlight and a mirror, and you can shine the light all around your own face. And pretty quick, you'll have a really good understanding of about how light plays on a human face. So now you can see it over the color, and you can basically just see how this picture looks really different depending on which light source you are using. Now that we have most of the shaded parts blocked out, roughly, we can go in and refine a little bit more and make her look less like a 2D character and more 3D by using soft brushes. Now, generally I stay away from soft brushes because they are a little tricky, but when I'm doing a really nice illustration, not just like a comic page or something I have to get out quickly, it's always best to have hard and soft shadows. It mimics real life more, and it just tends to look a little better. You can already see with me using this very basic Photoshop fuzzy brush that it's already making her look a lot more 3D. Because basically a hard shading line shows a really sharp edge, whereas a human body and clothes and stuff usually have sort of smoother, roundier parts, which you need a softer brush for. So as you can see, I'm basically just softening up a lot of these little areas, and I'm making her look more modeled and more 3D. You don't want to cut out all of your hard areas though, and that is because even on a human person, even on hair and clothes, sometimes there are really hard shade lines. It just depends on kind of where the light is and where these forms are falling, and it's something you sort of get a feel for. Basically, any part of the character that curves is a good place to put a soft shade, and anywhere where it just sort of drops off, like in between pieces of hair, it's good to put a hard shade. So now that I've got that fundamental sort of lesson out of the way, I'm going to show you two different styles that contradict each other, but that both can make really effective and good art. This is the way that I usually shade. It's called cell shading, and basically what I do is I take one particular color, I'm using a red in this case, and I use it over the whole image, and I don't have any soft shading. This is something that a lot of cartoonists do, and it gives it sort of a poppy, two-dimensional look, while still giving us information about this character and the light in the room. I've been using this method for a long time and I really enjoy it, though like I said, it is not as realistic or 3D looking as some other techniques. I also do the same with the highlights. I use pretty much a pure white and I just quickly block in some light where I want people to look and where I think would be the most reflective. So her eyes and her hair are the glossiest parts of her. So that's where I put the highlights. But of course, my personal taste is not the only good way to shade. Another way that I've seen that looks really nice is when someone takes a pretty strong saturated shading color like this blue that I'm using, and they use a big soft brush and they basically just brush in sort of this dreamy looking swath of color wherever there is a contour in the character. So on her skin I'm using a reddy red to make her skin look less dead, and then the rest of her I am using a nice cool blue. Now just using soft shades is a little bit tricky, but it can give your characters a really dreamy appearance. So if you're trying to do something that's sort of storybook or fairy tale like, this is not a bad way to go. And again, this one sort of flies in the face of what I was saying earlier, where if you want it to look as 3D as possible, you need some hard shades and some soft shades. But when you soften everything up, like I said, it gives it a nice storybook sort of feel. So basically what this goes to show is that if you know the fundamentals of how to make something look 3D, you can actually bend the rules either way and still make something that looks really good. And that is quick and efficient. I hope this was helpful to you guys. I'm curious to know which way you usually like to shade, and if you guys have any more questions about shading or light, please let me know down in the comments, and I will see you again in my next video. Big thank you to my patrons including Heart Sprinkle, Muffins McGee, Paynamel, Adrian Delport, Violet Wilkes, Chartype, Den, Brock, Juan Alvarez, Blah Blah Blah, Adrian Morales, @Lives Likes to Draw, and Kate Meekins. Thank you so much for your support.